During a recent podcast with American host Lex Fridman, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made startling claims about Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, labeling him a murderer. Zelensky's accusations stemmed from an alleged phone call between the two leaders shortly after Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. According to Zelensky, Lukashenko apologized for Belarus's involvement in the war and blamed Russian President Vladimir Putin for using Belarusian territory to launch missile attacks against Ukraine. This revelation is significant, as Belarus has been one of Russia's staunchest allies throughout the conflict. Zelensky recounted the phone call, claiming Lukashenko said, "It wasn't me. Missiles were launched from my territory, but it was Putin who ordered it. I'm not in charge of this." Zelensky alleged that Lukashenko even suggested Ukraine retaliate by bombing Belarus's Moza oil refinery, a critical infrastructure that processes Russian crude oil. If true, this would indicate Lukashenko's desperation to distance himself from Russia's aggression. However, Belarusian officials have dismissed these claims. Lukashenko's press secretary, Natalia Eismont, acknowledged that a phone call did take place but refuted Zelensky's version of events. Eismont asserted that the call happened because Lukashenko's youngest son, Nikolai, had Zelensky's contact information. She denied any apology or suggestion of bombing the oil refinery, stating that Lukashenko had nothing to apologize for. Lukashenko himself later accused Zelensky of fabricating the story to draw Belarus into the war, alleging that the West orchestrated these claims as part of a broader conspiracy. To understand the implications of these accusations, we must examine Belarus's role in the conflict. When Russia began its invasion in February 2022, Belarus allowed Russian forces to use its territory as a launch pad for missile strikes and ground operations. Ukrainian cities suffered extensive damage and civilian casualties as missiles struck critical infrastructure, military installations, and residential areas. This act of aggression drew widespread condemnation from the international community, with many viewing Belarus as an accomplice to Russia's war. Belarus's involvement went beyond providing a staging ground for Russian forces. Before the invasion, Belarus hosted joint military drills with Russia, known as Allied Resolve. While these exercises were officially temporary, Russian troops remained in Belarus afterward, using its proximity to Kyiv, a mere 90 kilometers from the border, as a strategic advantage. This cooperation demonstrated Belarus's deep alignment with Russia's military objectives, undermining any claims of neutrality. As the war progressed, reports surfaced of Belarus providing logistical support, intelligence, and medical aid to Russian troops. Hospitals in Belarus treated injured Russian soldiers, while its infrastructure facilitated the transport of supplies and reinforcements. Some allegations even suggested direct involvement of Belarusian troops, although these claims were officially denied. Additionally, Belarus faced criticism for detaining Ukrainian refugees and forcibly returning them to Ukraine, exposing them to grave danger. Despite widespread protests within Belarus against its involvement in the war, Lukashenko responded with harsh crackdowns, mirroring his authoritarian tactics during the 2020 protests following his disputed re-election. These actions further isolated Belarus internationally. Neighboring countries like Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia increased their military readiness, fearing the conflict could spill over into their territories. The European Union and the United States imposed severe sanctions on Belarus, targeting its officials, businesses, and economy. The economic consequences for Belarus have been devastating. Its economy contracted by 8.7% in 2022, erasing years of growth. Exports to the EU plummeted by 30%, while inflation soared to 12%. The energy sector, a cornerstone of Belarus's economy, saw revenues drop by 20%. These factors have created significant challenges for ordinary Belarusians, fueling discontent with Lukashenko's regime. Lukashenko's loyalty to Russia is driven by economic dependency and political survival. Belarus relies on Russian subsidies, loans, and energy supplies to sustain its economy. Politically, Lukashenko's grip on power has been bolstered by Russian support, particularly during the 2020 protests. Russia's backing ensured Lukashenko's survival, further cementing their alliance. For Russia, Belarus provides a strategic military and political advantage. Belarus's territory allows Russia to project power in Eastern Europe and NATO's eastern border. During the war, Belarus served as a crucial logistical base for Russian operations. Economically, Belarus remains a reliable trade partner for Russia, especially as Western sanctions have limited Russia's global market access. The war has taken a heavy toll on both Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine has suffered immense human and economic losses, with over 43,000 soldiers killed and thousands of civilians displaced. Cities like Mariupol and Kharkiv have been devastated, leaving millions without access to basic services. The agricultural sector, vital to Ukraine's economy, has been severely disrupted, with losses estimated at $8.7 billion. Russia has also faced significant losses, with over 800,000 casualties reported and thousands of military vehicles destroyed. Economic sanctions have crippled its economy, leading to a 2.2% contraction in 2022. Inflation remains high, and Western markets remain closed, forcing Russia to seek alternative trade partnerships with countries like China. The war's psychological toll is equally severe. Soldiers and civilians on both sides are grappling with trauma and psychological distress. Mental health services are overwhelmed, and the long-term impact on individuals and communities will be profound. As the conflict continues, the international community remains deeply concerned about its escalating brutality. Diplomatic efforts to resolve the war have so far been unsuccessful. Some speculate that a new U.S. administration, possibly led by Donald Trump, could bring fresh opportunities for peace negotiations. However, the path to ending the war remains uncertain, and the human cost continues to mount. In conclusion, the war has caused unimaginable suffering and destruction, affecting millions of lives. While accusations and denials dominate the narrative, the focus should remain on achieving peace and alleviating the humanitarian crisis. Behind every statistic lies a human story, and the need for an end to the conflict has never been more urgent.